Doing a book review on The Wildlife of Our Bodies by Rob Dunn. We have 3 amateur microbiologists here. We have Nick, we have Ashley, and then we have Allison. We broke it down from chapter to chapter, so first off is me. The Wildlife of Our Bodies started off with a scientist named Tim White who found a skeleton that dated back to times before Lucy, so it was really important to know what conditions this skeleton lived in, and it turned out that it was found that it ate fruits and meats and used sticks and never cooked its meats, never had a fire, so there was a lot of different bacteria the skeleton was eating to survive. So it brought into chapter 2 that our life expectancy in the 1900s was around 48 years old. 1930s, it was about 60 years old, and so on and so forth. It kept going up. And this kind of was found that people were living longer because there was more things like penicillin, antibiotics, and all that good stuff. But there was a rise in autoimmune diseases such as Crohn's, arthritis. Autism was definitely on the rise in the 1950s, which directly correlated to the use of antibiotics. For those people who don't know what Crohn's is, it's an attack on the immune system, vomiting, weight loss. Sometimes it even remains to get the entire colon removed, so it's pretty bad. But it is found that in places like Africa, where antibiotics aren't as accessible, these diseases aren't found. And a study found that having a refrigerator is correlated with Crohn's, but there wasn't a lot of information to back that up. So a guy named Joel Weinstock has the germ theory of disease, and the book describes that as we get sick when new species invade our bodies. So some diseases are caused because we took other things away. When we use antibiotics, it kills off everything and not just one thing. We discussed this in class with broad spectrum antibiotics versus narrow spectrum antibiotics. In the 1930s, everyone had worms in their systems, kids, adults, and there was nothing you could do about it, but Crohn's also wasn't around. It was when these worms started getting killed off that Crohn's was very prevalent. It was described in the book that bodies miss worms so bad they destroyed themselves, resulting in an autoimmune disease. There was a woman named Deborah who read about this, and she had really bad Crohn's, debilitated her life, couldn't do anything. So she wanted to go get these worms. She looked into a study in Europe, too expensive, and she eventually found a guy who had a clinic in Mexico who had discovered worms as a cure for his asthma. He had gone to Cameroon, and his name was Jasper Lawrence, and he had gotten these worms in his feet by walking around dried out latrines. And I say dried out because when he went in the wet latrines, the worms were not living as easily. And this woman, Deborah, went to Mexico to this clinic this guy opened after he found that worms cured his asthma. And she got the worms, and she found every few months her symptoms were coming back. But she'd just go back and get the worms, and it seemed like a magical cure every time she went back. Her arthritis was gone, her Crohn's was gone, everything was gone. So it was really important that she got these worms, which leads me to conclude that getting rid of all microorganisms in your gut isn't going to cure everything. It's actually bringing on more diseases. So that brings into our next session with Ashley. So Ashley, I was reading the book and I was left with some questions, and I was hoping maybe you can answer them for me. So my first one is, what do I need to know about the gut and the appendix?
Well, Allison, there was a scientist named James Rayner. He was curious to see if he could scrub all the bacteria off of rats and if they would be able to survive in a germ-free environment. What James Rayner found was that after he scrubbed the rats and shaved them of any and all hair, germs, microbes, he found that those rats living in a germ-free environment would die if they were exposed to any bacterial pathogens that snuck into the cages.
Really?
So that leads us to believe that we need these microbes to survive.
Does this have anything to do with the appendix?
Yes, it does. The appendix is, in fact, reserved for good bacteria, which in the past people believed that it was just useless. The appendix is filled with biofilms that help our gut. It's also filled with an antibody called IgA, and it forms biofilms among the bacteria so that they don't wash away and they stick together. The immune system tells our body to hold on to these bacteria, so when the immune system is compromised, we have these remaining bacteria in the appendix to recolonize the gut when times are tough.
Oh, so which brings me into my next question is the book talked about cows, and I was a little confused. So how do cows domesticate humans?
Cows have domesticated humans because from the earliest days of farming, humans were domesticating cows at first, and then humans became reliant on products such as milk, yogurt, and before this time, humans did not have the enzyme lactase. But since they started consuming so much dairy products, they adapted to this new way of life.
So it's kind of like a probiotic almost.
Exactly.
In a way. Yeah. So actually, I didn't come up with this question, but the book kind of asked the question is, so who cares if your ancestors sucked milk from Ocean?
Well, we care because now 65% of U.S. adults are overweight. The Western diet consists of the Western diet's calories come mainly from foods which began once agriculture became alive.
So things like corn and potatoes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cereals, dairy, simple sugars, vegetable oils, and booze.
Booze. Yeah.
Not all individuals have the gene to digest certain foods, such as milk, because people from different geographical locations have different genes, eat different foods, and adapt to these foods.
So it's like a food allergy almost, and it's almost like a vaccine for food allergies, eating the food?
Exactly.
Okay. So that leads me into one of our last questions, and it's before agriculture, all the cows, all the milk, people were hunting. Weren't they ever scared?
Yes, they were very scared. Humans had to look out for crocodiles, lions, wolves, bears. Humans began hunting those animals rather than being afraid of them. So this is what led into agriculture.
Oh, so it was the farming that made people almost stop hunting in a way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
And then what about fight or flight? Does that have to do with anything in terms of hunting and eating, or?
Yes, the fight or flight response has contributed to the natural tendency to kill our predators, which is why so little species are remaining.
And so for people who don't know what fight or flight is, it's the body's systemic response to fear, and it basically helps the organs that need everything rather than like breathing, rather than focusing on other things like nail growth.
Right.
So
it involves the amygdala and the adrenal glands.
Indeed it does.
And so nowadays we don't have to worry about a lion chasing us down the street, right? So the amygdala and the adrenal glands are used to notify the body of certain
stimulus,
anxiety and stress contributors such as terrorist attacks, money troubles.
Or robbery.
Exactly.
Someone stealing your micro lab
Someone
book.
chasing you down the street for your lunch money.
Well, thanks, Ashley. You really educated me today. Thanks a lot.
No problem. I'm here with Nick today, and Nick, I just have a few questions about the book as well. How have our eyes evolved us?
Well, over time, we have relied more on our eyes as our primary sense. Our vision has become stronger, and our sense of smell fades away. My theory is that people that have gotten bit by snakes should be able to recognize snakes more often, therefore prevent ourselves from getting bit. We can protect ourselves because we can see the snakes. Even when we can not see the microorganisms that cause us to have diseases, we can see the effect they have on our bodies. Therefore, we create chemical method to kill them and physical methods to kill them.
Right. Okay, thank you. There are so many different places in the world. How are we still related to other people around the world?
People differ from person to person and from culture to culture. However, we may not be so different after all. Regardless of where we are from, there are some situations that cause the same reactions among us. For example, if we drink water that has Vibrio Clostridia in it, we'll all be sick. We'll all have diarrhea, and our bodies would be very dehydrated.
Ugh.
This is evidence. This is evidence that we may have once all been related. Our senses cannot tell us whether or not food or water is safe. That is why people get foodborne illnesses and microbial intoxications from staphylococcal organisms.
Okay, thank you. How have ticks changed humans to their own species?
Ticks and fleas are the main reason for us losing our hair. This is because they can cause rickets. Rickettsia will lead us to having low blood pressure, a fever, headaches, chills, muscle pains, and spotted rash on our hands and feet. This disease is caused by hair is a place where ticks and bacteria can survive. Therefore, they can harm us if they're living in our hair. This is shown in history in the book when soldiers that wore hair pieces were getting spotted fever because of the ticks that were living on them, while the soldiers that were surviving didn't have any hair pieces on.
Right. Okay. What is the effect of more people living in one area?
When humans stay in one place, more diseases can occur. More bacteria can grow in certain places, and they can spread to more people. The denser the population is, the easier it is for disease to spread. When H1N1 came out, people were on the lookout.
H1N1 came out. That's why I went and I got a flu shot because I was so scared of catching that, you know?
Many people stopped hugging and touching people that were not their family. This is called behavioral immune. It is a person's emotional state which arises their consciousness and affects their behavior and culture. They do not want to get sick, so they stop touching people they don't know. For people to live together, places need to be clean as possible. Non-social infections are diseases obtained from a healthcare facility. Therefore, we need to keep our facilities clean to prevent people from getting sick that are coming in.
Right. Wow, Nick, I really am dizzy from all this information, you know?
Me too.
What will happen as the amount of people living on Earth goes up, but the amount of living space goes down?
Well, in order to live longer, we're going to need a plan because in 2015, the big problem is going to be with diseases and amount of food. The world will have so many more people, making it very easy for diseases to spread. The book suggests a plan for growing crops on rooftops, but that would be not enough crops for people. Also, the soil may contain diseases like Clostridium endospores, and then can spread around the city from people walking on the roofs and then bringing them out into the cities.
Exactly, and those aren't hard to get rid of, you know?
So, the new plan is to grow food inside of old buildings in the city. If the farming is done inside of the buildings, it will be less likely to contain diseases.
Guys, thanks for listening. I hope you guys got a lot of useful information because we definitely did from the book. Maybe we'll do this again sometime. I forgot my goggles. I forgot your goggles.